All right, we have made it to Friday, our last day before spring break. Everybody give me a big woo-hoo. Let's get going so we can get this day done and start spring break. Well, we're finishing the module, closing it out before we start our last one here after spring break. So we get a week off, then we'll get back into our reading again. And so we look at the end of every module. I like to look at two charts, our synthesized chart and then our making connections chart. So let's take a look first at this synthesizing chart. And we start off by thinking about what we know. And let's think about this module as a whole, which was traditional stories. And we looked at tricksters and tall tales. And so all these different stories. Let's just think about the stories we've read. We started off with what stories did we start off with? We had a story we read about not what we started off with, but we read The Fox and the Crow. Remember The Fox and the Crow, and the fox wanted a piece of cheese that the crow had in its mouth, and he kept bragging on the crow and saying, "Hey, you're the most beautiful thing. I bet your voice is so beautiful. Why don't you let me hear your voice?" And as soon as the crow started to sing, it dropped the cheese and the fox ate it. Raven and the crayfish. The crayfish tricked the raven the same way, really flattering the raven and asking it wanting it to speak. And as soon as it speak, it dropped the crayfish, which it was about to eat. We read about in the days of King Adobe, the old lady and the two thieves who were trying to steal her ham she'd worked so hard for, saved for. And she tricked them and put a brick in there instead. When they left, they thought they were going to get some ham, but they opened it up and saw they were tricked by her and had a brick instead. We read Thunder Rose. I think that's where we started off, wasn't it? I couldn't remember which story was first, but it's Thunder Rose. It was a tall tale about she had the power of thunder and lightning and sun to do tornadoes and got them to calm down. And then this week we've, of course, been doing 10 Sons. So what I know, well, I was at first when we started this module and we read Thunder Rose, I was excited and I was thinking, man, these are going to be some exciting stories. I love tall tales. I love these folk tales, and I'm really excited about this module. And when I was reading them, I was still pretty excited. And then I realized this module is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more tall tales like Paul Bunyan and Babe and the Blue Ox. And I thought it was going to be some more stories that I was a little bit more familiar with. But as I read, I realized, hey, the new understanding of what I learned was there's a lot more tall tales and fables and myths that I've never heard. And so I learned some new ones in this module. I had never heard that story in the days of King Adobe about the lady who tricked the thieves. That was probably my favorite story in the whole module. I just like the lesson those thieves learned, and that this sneaky little lady that you just wouldn't expect to be as smart as she was tricked them and got their brick, gave them a brick and took her ham back. That was probably my favorite one. Probably my least favorite one was the one we read this week. I was not crazy about 10 Sons, and that's okay. I did like Thunder Rose. I thought Thunder Rose was a story I'd never heard before, but I liked the big folktale power she had, like a lot of folk tales. I liked that. And so by the end, I was thinking, like I said, there's a lot of stories and tall tales that I still haven't read. As long as I've been teaching and as long as I've been reading, there's still a lot that I've not read. So our thoughts change as we go through the module, don't they, in the stories? Let's make some connections, okay? So when we read, we find ways the text is like things in our own life or other texts that we've read. So is there a text that reminded you of yourself or something that's happened in your life? Can any of you control thunder and lightning? If you do, don't tell me, because I would be scared of you. It's an exaggerated story. I guess if I had to relate one to myself, I actually have a hard time doing it with any of our stories we've read in this module. I don't know, to be honest with you. I guess the ones that I was most familiar with were the Aesop's fables about the raven and the crow and the raven and the crayfish and the fox and the crow, because I've heard stories like them before. And they reminded me of when I was like in fourth, fifth grade, when we started reading some Aesop fables. I don't know if it's Aesop or Aesop, however you say it. When we started reading some of those, and I enjoyed reading those when I was younger. So I guess that's the way this module relates to me or connects with me, because those were Aesop's fables were some of the stories that I have read before. I didn't know the other stories in our module. Connected text to text. Well, I thought of the whole time we were reading the 10 Sons, I thought of the story I posted there for you on Thursday about the Emperor's Pot, another Chinese fable, another Chinese legend. And so those were connected. The Emperor's Pot and the 10 Sons were both, I thought of that story as we read this one. They're kind of connected. They're both Chinese stories. And then text to the world. How is this module of like something that's happening in the world or our community? You know, one thing that we could say, I guess, about this module is we kind of had a big variety, a big diversity of where the stories came from. We had this kind of out west American tale with Thunder Rose out on the western plains and horses and cowgirls and, you know, kind of an American tale. And you had this King Adobe story, which really takes place like in the deserts of southwestern United States, and where the Pueblo Indians were, who made the adobe home, adobe bricks. So you had some American stories, but then you had these old Aesop fables that are from long ago from another country. And then we had this Chinese story. So there was a big diversity of where the stories come from. And really that's our community too, isn't it? There's a big diversity of types of people in our community right here in Russellville and in Morristown and Hamlin County. We have a lot of different types of people. And just like those stories, thinking of the 10 Sons, their clothes were different, their styles different. Each story was told in a different way than maybe we're used to. But you know, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because you know what? I like to go sometimes to El Toro and eat, don't you? You like some good Mexican food every now and then? Yeah, and those people who've moved into our community who open El Toro and cook this food that we wouldn't have otherwise if they hadn't moved here, that's a good thing. I like to go to Emma's Asian One, and I like to go to the Bamboo Garden, Lucas's parents, and I love to go to Bamboo Garden and eat some double sauteed pork. That's my favorite thing to get at the Bamboo Garden, and I would never get to eat that if people from other countries hadn't moved here and brought their culture and their diversity with them. So I'm so thankful that we live in a community where we have people from different countries have come together and share their culture through food, and we can learn so much from one another that way. Our story, our module of stories from all over the world, it kind of is like that. I guess that reminds me of our community. Okay, well, there's your thoughts for you, Nicole, okay, about this module. Well, I'm going to be quiet now so you can get started on your spelling test and your 10 Sons test. Get them done, get your other assignments done today, and then I'm happy for you that you get to start spring break after this. We'll see you later.